Where did my ancestors live originally?
My great-grandfather came from Ireland, and he had a lot of red hair and a great big beard.
Where did they come from? They came from Europe, Germany.
My dad's side of the family come from Germany, the part of Germany that is now occupied by Poland, and my mom's ancestors come from Wales.
My grandmother was Kashub, and my grandfather was German, and they came over because there was always wars over there in Poland and Kashub, and they're always fighting. So they came here, and they settled in Ohio, and then we moved to Michigan. They moved to Michigan, and that's where I was born.
Ancestors lived in southern Alabama and southern Georgia.
Well, most of my ancestors lived in a place called Camilla, Georgia, down in South Georgia, where they have cotton, lots of cotton and fields of corn and stuff. That was where they lived mostly. And then we lived in Albany. That's where I was born in Moultrie.
We had Indians. They were Cherokee Indians. And he looked a little bit Indian. He had little high cheekbones. The Peacocks, for instance, which was my mother's maiden name, that they came from England, and my daddy's people, who were shepherds, came up down through North Carolina.
How long has our family been in the United States?
They came over 100 years ago.
Well, let's see, they came over here. My original grandparents, or great-grandparents that came over in 1890. So they've been here quite a few years.
About 150 years.
In late 1800s, I think it was 1880, is when my great-grandmother came over.
Nearly 200 years, but I haven't gotten all the way back. I've only gotten back to like in the 1860s.
Their whole lives. Their whole lives. They didn't live in a different country. But maybe some of my ancestors, like my great-great-great-grandfather or something like that, they might have lived in a different country. But most of my ancestors that are close to me live in Georgia, or lived in Georgia.
Well, we think at least since Columbus came over here, which was when? Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
What languages did they speak?
They spoke English when they came to America.
They only knew German. They spoke German all the time.
My dad's side of the family spoke German. My mom's was English, I guess, is what they spoke in Wales.
Well, my grandmother, or my great-grandmother, spoke Kashub, and it's almost Poland, almost Polish. And then my grandfather spoke German.
He spoke Southern English, just like I'm speaking now.
Real Southern like this.
Well, like your grandmama said, they were all from the South. But I do think that none of us really speak South Georgia, kind of. I think we all have pretty good diction. And I don't know where the heck that came from, because I don't know if any of us that speak real Southern.
What kind kinds of jobs lifestyle did they have?
He was in the army, he fought in the war, and was a farmer.
They were farmers. They had a dairy farm.
My dad's were like masons and brickwork and stuff like that. My mom's side back then was actually the King of Wales.
My family was, when they were in Ohio, were in the medical field. They had a doctor that was part of the family. And I have one of my ancestors was in a house fire and she was burned really super bad. And they took frog bellies, the bellies off the frogs, and sewed them onto her skin to do skin grafts to try to keep her alive. And she lived about 3 weeks, and she was the first person ever to get a skin transplant from burning.
Well, they were farmers. I know my mother's father was a farmer. He also owned a service station where he sold gas and food. He also owned a billiard hall, or a pool room as people called it. And on my father's side of the family, a lot of my father's family was in the scrap metal business. They had scrap metal businesses around South Georgia.
My grandfather cut hair, and my other grandfather had a hardware store, and that was what they did. And my grandfather was also a policeman.
Well, there were a lot of teachers in your heritage. My grandmother, my grandfather were both. Your great great grandfather was a professor, and he had his own school. For young boys to get them ready to go to college.
Thank you.
Quite well.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all your questions?
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Is that good? You're
Thank
welcome.
you. You're welcome. Thank you.
You are so